Okay, so you can see my presentation screen? Everybody? Okay. All right, so let's start with, I think, very basic question, what is Kovair? So one way to look at Kovair is it is a box of a number of different applications in the area of ALM, or Application Lifecycle Management, and ITSM, that is IT Service Management. So in the ALM side, we have the requirements management, test management, issues, risk, release, project management tools in the same box. And each of these applications are actually, by their own right, compete very well with any other standalone tools from other vendors. And in the ITSM side, we have the service request, incident, change, problem management, etc. Now, all of these tools are delivered as a 100% web-architected, web-based tool. It is perfectly suitable for a globally distributed team which needs a 24/7 global access to all of these tools. The second component of Kovair is its process technology. So we have a very powerful process engine called Omniprocess, using which you can create multiple processes for each of these built-in applications. So for example, for requirements management, you can create approval and review process. You can create a change management process. You can create an implementation process. Similarly, you can have an issues management process, or on the ITSM side, help desk process, incident management process, etc. And all of these things you can actually do using our very powerful graphical drag and drop user interface. The third component of Kovair is its integration technology called Omnibus. It is an ESB technology, Enterprise Service Bus technology. So using this, you can actually integrate any third-party tool or application. And since it is based on SOA, these tools or applications can run on any platform, anywhere in the world, even behind the firewall. And as I said, that this is a SOA-based technology, so using the web services, this is very easy to integrate any other third-party tool or even your internal legacy system or homegrown application. Finally, Kovair is also a platform, which basically means that you can create your user-defined business applications, which are as powerful as any of the built-in applications. As a matter of fact, built-in applications are also developed using the same Kovair platform. And what is really great is that you can create these applications without writing a single line of code. Everything you can do just by drag and drop. And this is what is known as the end-user development, and Gartner actually calls it as a citizen development. Now, on top of that, whatever application you're creating, you can make it process-enabled by using Omniprocess, and you can also integrate with other tools and applications using Omnibus technology. So all of your business applications can also use all the other components of Kovair, all the other technologies. Okay, now if we look at the development life cycle as a whole, each of the cylinders actually represent a phase in the development life cycle. They also represent the different tools in a number of different silos. Let me give you a couple of examples. You may have a product management group of a company A, which is using a requirements management tool in Boston. And then you may have a QA group for another company B, which may be an outsourced company, working out of Bangalore, using test management tool on a different platform. And it is almost guaranteed that these tools are not talking to each other. And if they don't talk to each other, the requirements change, and the QA people don't know about it, and they are still testing the wrong requirements. Now, because of the siloed nature of these tools, we see the following problems. Number one, there is no coordinated process. There may be some pockets of processes, but there is no process across the life cycle. As we have seen, that there is no relation, there is no traceability between the artifacts which are trapped in these siloed tools. It is so difficult to create a consolidated reporting. For example, if you want to create a release note, you have to possibly manually compile using Microsoft Word or something like that by collecting information from a number of different tools. And finally, each of these groups are working in isolation using their tool only. Now, if these are the problems, how do you solve it? The way we solve it in Kovair is we put them together in a single repository called Kovair repository. Now, this cylinder actually represents the different entities within the repository, and they are actually the base of all these different built-in applications. On top of that, we allow you to create your own user-defined entities to create your own user-defined applications. Now, once you have got all of these in a single repository, now we can do the collaboration, the process, the traceability, the report across all of these applications. Now, this is a very nice picture for any organization who is using just Kovair. We would love that an organization is just using Kovair. But unfortunately, the reality is a little different. The reality is we go to an organization and we see they're already using a number of different tools. And then we introduce Kovair with its built-in application. So now the question is that how can we deliver the value we have seen in the previous slide when we had just one single repository. But in this case, we are actually working with multiple repositories. Each of the silver cylinder is a repository. So that is called the multi-repository ALM problem. So how do you solve that problem? The way we solve that problem is we create the entities within Kovair framework which represent the objects in the external tool. We also call them proxy entities. And then using Omnibus, we create the adapters for each of these external tools. And these adapters actually integrate and create a link between the Kovair internal proxy entities and the objects in the external tool. And you see that there are two ways we do this linking. One is synchronization, which is basically a bidirectional replication. So whatever you add in one tool will be replicated in the other tool. Or it can be federated. Federated means that all the informations are not replicated in Kovair. They are available on demand whenever necessary. And typically, the configuration management tools are a typical example for our federated tool because we don't really need to copy all the files, source files, everything, which are managed by this configuration management tool. Now, whatever be the way, synchronization or federation, once we have all this information in Kovair repository, now we can do collaboration, traceability, report, process, all of those things across these different set of information, even when they are coming from this external tool. So this is what is known as the multi-repository ALM, and Forrester Research actually recognizes that Kovair is the only ALM tool vendor today who can actually deliver on this promise.
Since Guy mentioned Forrester, let me mention Gartner. Gartner designated us as a cool vendor in 2008 for coming up with this integration bus. Okay,
now if you look at the integration technology, so there are predominantly two architectures. Most of the tool vendors, as a matter of fact, all the tool vendors except Kovair use this point-to-point custom integration between the tools. And as you can see that as your number of tools increases, this number of custom integration increases actually in a n square order. And whereas in enterprise service bus, it is a linear order. And so just to give an example, if you want to replace just one tool out of, let's say, 10 tools, in a point-to-point custom integration, you have to replace 9 different integrations. Whereas in an ESB architecture, you have to just replace one adapter. So you can very well understand the amount of savings in terms of time, effort, headache, etc. Now, let me quickly go through the differentiation of Omnibus against the other integration technologies or integration tools available. So first of all, what I mentioned is hub or bus versus point-to-point, and as I mentioned that it is a substantial savings in terms of the total effort in both creation and management. It is a web service standard base, so as I mentioned that all the other tools can be anywhere in the world running on any kind of platform. And then we have got a lot of advanced features. Now, I'd like to actually mention one case study here very briefly. You must be familiar with the name Infosys, and possibly sometimes you compete with them. Infosys is, as you know, is a very large service organization. So they are actually using Kovair to integrate 22 of their different tools, and that includes some of the standard rational set of tools, open source tools, even some of their internally developed tools. And this is going to be one of the largest ecosystems of ALM tools used in a production system. Integrated. Yeah. So, many of these advanced features you see are developed based on Infosys's kind of requirement, because they are using it in a production system and they want a kind of foolproof method of integrating them. And lastly, one other thing we have is that when you integrate with Omnibus other tools which lack some of these advanced features like the process capability, traceability, etc., Kovair actually add those capability to that particular tool. And in the demo, actually, I'll highlight that. So just for the sake of presentation here, I want to mention that we actually augment that capability of the external tools by using our integration technology.
So let me make a little sales pitch here, Vipin. When we go in, our strategy is we're not going to take away anything you use. One of our sales directors used to call it, we will not rip and replace. We will add value to existing tools and bring them all together.
Okay, so these are the list of adapters as we are developing, and as you can see that this is actually a growing list. Almost every month this is changing as we are releasing new adapters. And if you do not see a particular tool here, we'd love to kind of develop those adapters, and that is a strategy we have taken, that based on our customers' need and requirements, we are developing them. It typically takes about 4 to 6 man-weeks to develop an adapter. So it is not a very lengthy process either, and that's how we are kind of developing all of them. Yes.
Guy and Vipin, one thing also for the folks, this is Don, for the folks that were not at the presentation last week, it's very important to note and to bear in mind that this is a bidirectional interface when we're talking about this, so that there are benefits on both sides, so that if you have legacy, quote-unquote, tools that you're utilizing, that information, data, whatever that is, can also be utilized by, the more Web 2.0-like tools like Kovair. So if you're doing requirements definitions and that type of thing and in a legacy product, that also can be viewed and utilized by a product like Kovair has in the requirements definition world.
Yes, that's a good point, Don. And by the way, I don't think we had this slide, which is as complete as we're showing right now, in the presentation that I had made last week.
Yeah, actually, Don, that's a very good point. And in the demo, also, we would like to highlight that particular aspect of our integration, the bidirectional nature of this integration.
Yep, because that's really what sets Kovair apart from anything else that's out there. It's truly a bidirectional integration interface. It's not some sort of import facility that you get part of it and you have to programmatically change and this and that. So, I think that's one of the real keys here. Especially if you're looking at scaling out to a larger organization, as that you may start with a small team, and then as you're adding capabilities or other teammates, which also could be other companies, other subcontractors, it's important that may be housed, in other parts of the country. That's a real key component there, that you're not having to, do the rip and replace, do the retraining, all of that, but that you can cohesively work together.
That's right. Absolutely. Okay. Let me quickly go through the benefits of integration. I'm sure that you are very much aware of those. First of all, you can integrate an ALM environment with a multi-vendor ALM tools. I think that is the biggest advantage we see. And we get a lot of traction on this particular point with our customers, because as Vipin said, that you don't have to rip and replace anything. So you are very comfortable with using a particular tool, continue using that. But by integrating, the rest of the team now have access to the data and all the things you are doing in that particular tool. The overall traceability, so it is not just the integration, also the data or the objects you have in different tools, you have to create a traceability between those kinds of objects. And in the demo, I'll actually show you. Supporting the global application development, it is a browser-based, so at the end of the day, you can see everything from any location. The end-to-end process automation, and in the demo also, I'll show you, highlight that process automation capability. Total visibility with respect to our dashboard and all the different kinds of reports we have. We have a better change management. Again, going back to the traceability, if you change one item, it can impact other items, both proactive and as well as reactive way. Overall, increase the productivity. And finally, at the end of the day, what you really want is the increased productivity and increased quality, right? So all of these things you can get out of this integration with Kovair. These are some of the applications where how Kovair is being used. I'll just quickly go through them. The last one, you see the vendor management. That's actually a custom application created by one of our customers, California State Agency. Selected customers, you will see some of the big names here. Infosys, you see that there. We also have a number of government clients, both in federal, state, and local level, and then also smaller product development companies. Okay, let me quickly go through this slide just to give you an overview of the demo which I'm going to show you. Is first of all, the tools we have kind of integrated. For example, requirements management. We have the Requisite Pro as well as Kovair will be used for requirements management. This is a kind of scenario we have created. You have got both Eclipse and Visual Studio will be used for coding by number of developers. Subversion for configuration management. Quality Center and Kovair will be used for test management. For issue tracking and defect tracking, Kovair will be used, and project management will be done by Kovair. And as we are highlighting that all of these data transfer are bidirectional. So that is the overview of the demo I'll be showing you. Okay? All right. So we are ready for the product demo. Any questions so far?
No, this is consistent with the presentation that I saw.
Okay. All right. Good.
So now, one thing before we start the demo, guys, you want to tell them where the servers are and so on, so they get an idea of this whole global thing that's happening here.
Yeah. So in this particular demo, we are actually using 3 different servers. One server is in Texas, and 2 of them are actually on the Amazon cloud. So I really don't even know where are they located. They can be anywhere in the world. Most likely they are somewhere in Seattle. But these are 2 different servers going through the Amazon cloud. And that's one other thing I'd like to quickly mention. We have found that it's actually very easy to create a Kovair installation using the image on the Amazon cloud, and especially for somebody who wants to create a Kovair installation very quickly, they can do it. And as you will be seeing that we can actually integrate all of these different servers or all these different tools running on these different servers. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to show you, this is actually what we are looking at, is we are looking at the contact page of our corporate website. This is not our application. Now, why I'm showing it is that one of the links here, you see the requirement submission for Booz Allen, so which basically brings us to a web form, which is also part of our corporate website. This is, of course, not available for all the typical users, but this is actually part of our corporate website. So let's submit our requirement, but one thing I'd like to mention here that why I'm showing these particular waveforms, the reason are 2. One is this is an example of integration of your internal legacy system, whether it's a corporate website, whether it's a portal, even you can have other legacy applications also. It's very easy to create these kinds of integrations. And the second reason I'm showing it is actually very important. This gives you a way to actually capture information from those users who do not have a direct access to any of the tools, including Kovair. But you want to still capture their issues, their requests, their requirements, etc. And for that, you can create a very simple waveform like this and integrate with Kovair. So that itself becomes a very nice, simple tool to capture that. Okay, so let me create a request here. So I'm creating a request for Booz Allen. Okay? And author, Jesse, I'll make you the author, okay? So that's Jesse.
Sounds good.
Okay, and Booz Allen is the company. And you see that here, the requirement type, this one is a customer requirement, it's coming from the customer. But we have all different kinds of requirement types, and these requirement types are actually configured in Kovair, and you can bring it from Kovair to show it here. So basically, our APIs are bidirectional. You can have the all the different kinds of information going back and forth between Kovair and the other tool. So let me just copy this one. Okay, so, and let me save it. And as I mentioned that all of these tools are using the web service-based API, so the servers can be anywhere, the corporate server in one place and the application in another place. Okay, so that is submitted. Now let's go to our application. So now we are looking at Kovair login page. So as I mentioned, the Kovair is 100% web-based. Now that is actually an important point to understand, that there are many, many tools which claim that they have web interface. But in most of the cases, this web interface is a light one, a crippled one. You cannot do everything using that web interface. But in Kovair, you can actually do everything. The end-user functionalities as well as any kind of advanced operations, administration, everything you can do using Kovair. As a matter of fact, we do not have a desktop client, so you have to use the browser. And we are compatible to Internet Explorer, Firefox. Also, I think we are working on the Safari for Apple Macintosh, etc. So what I'll do, I'll log in as Alan. Alan is a business analyst, so let's look at from the Alan's point of view. So what the business analyst sees whenever a requirement is submitted from the corporate website. So it goes to Alan's homepage. Let me explain the different areas of this homepage. At the right top, we have who has logged in. Also, it shows a session 1, which is a login session. Now, session 1 basically means that you can have multiple sessions. So you can actually log in different tabs on the same window or in multiple browser window as the same user or other users. Okay, so that's actually very useful because you can be at the same time in different areas of the application. Under that, we have the site called Kovair. Now, Kovair architecturally is a multi-tenant site, which basically means a single instance of Kovair can support multiple customers in a very watertight, in a sandbox way. They cannot interact with each other, and that is how actually we are offering our SaaS solution. But of course, on-premise, there's one site per instance. And for every site, you can have multiple workspaces. So these are the different workspaces which Alan has access to. Again, depending on access right of a particular user, you can see just one workspace or multiple workspaces. Now, the best way to describe a workspace is a very flexible container for multiple different kinds of items. So you may decide that in a workspace, you can have, for example, different requirements and the issues and test cases and all these different kinds of things. And depending on your need for security and sharing, you can actually configure these workspaces. You may decide, I'll have a single workspace for the whole company, or workspace per customer, or workspace per project. So it's completely depending on your situation, you can actually configure these workspaces. So we'll be working on, today, we'll be working on a workspace we created for you called Booz Allen. Now, based on the selected workspace, it also shows, again, based on the access right of this logged-in user, the number of different tabs. You see that from project to SharePoint documents, project requirements, test case, and SharePoint documents, these are the different tabs created, these are the entities created for this workspace. And these are the entities, comes as tabs, and Alan has access to. But really, there may be many more entities created. In Kovair, tasks is not an entity. Task is a built-in object within Kovair. And let me explain a little bit about the relation between the tasks and entities. So Kovair, what is known as a task-based system. which is superior to some other tools which are basically a state-based system. In a state-based system, an item, for example, a requirement can be in one state alone at any point of time. But in a task-based system, you can have multiple tasks at the same time linked to the same entity item. So with respect to a requirement, it can be assigned to different people and asking them to do different tasks. So there is a parallelism in a task-based system which is not there in a state-based system. Okay, now we are looking at the dashboard here, which is Alan, the way he has configured his homepage. He said that whenever I log in, come to my dashboard. And Kovair actually supports multiple dashboards. So the administrator can create different kinds of dashboards for different workspaces or different roles. So QA manager will be seeing a different dashboard from the business analyst, etc. Or even you can create a single dashboard across a number of different workspaces you are working on. And as you can see, there are quite a few colorful kind of graphs there. And these graphs, colorful, looks good. But what is more important that these graphs actually are being calculated on real time. So the value you are seeing here, the numbers you are seeing here, are all the real numbers which are being generated on real time based on the operations of the system. Now, you can, of course, right-click here, save an image, put it on your Word file or presentation. But what is really important, all of these elements you see here, for example, this one is a distribution by source of all the requirements, and there are, you see the 35 customer feedback. So if I click on that, actually that opens up a pop-up window to show me all those 35 requirements which correspond to that particular element. So you can actually drill down directly from these graphs in the dashboard and look at each individual item there. So which is actually a very useful thing. Now let's go to the My Task page here. So in the My Task page, it shows at the top, you see that there is a task here waiting for me. Now let me explain a little bit about this task page. Now this is actually a universal task page, which is actually bringing tasks from all these different workspaces. So this one, all of them actually shows Booz Allen, but there are other workspaces also. And maybe there are different activities a person needs to do. And the owner, in this particular case, Alan is one of the owners because we are looking at owner Alan's My Task page. But there can be other owners as well. So a task can be assigned to more than one person, as you can see here. Okay? And this is one task which is actually automatically created when we submitted that request from the corporate website. So let's go to that particular task and let's look at that. So this particular task shows that the source item, that means the item which it is linked to, is requirement, the one we submitted from the corporate website. The activity is associate project, and the owner is Alan and Mark, and it says huge. That means that any one of them can take this task and becomes the owner, which will automatically remove the task from the other person's home page. Now here, what Alan needs to do is basically link to a project. So let's go to the linking project here. And Alan knows that what are the projects going on, and the customer, of course, doesn't know what are all the projects going on in this particular company. So they just created a request, but Alan knows that this actually belongs to this Amex project. So let's save it. And by doing that, as far as Alan is concerned, he is done. He can complete the task. So when he completes the task, that particular task is now gone from his My Task page, right? And this is very important things to note. That as far as Alan is concerned, he doesn't know where that particular requirement came from. Where is it going to once he is done? Because there is a process running in the back end which is completely transparent to the users like Alan, right? Alan just focuses on the task which appears on his home page. He just does the activities, whatever the task is asking him to do, completes the task, and that's it. But there is a process running in the back end which is actually driving all of these things. So for your benefit, let me open the hood and let me show you what is really happening in the back end. So let's go to the requirements tab to look at that particular requirement which actually we are tracking. So here's the requirement, requirement number 136, request for Booz Allen, right? And that, as you can see here now, is assigned to Mary and Sky, asking them to review it. Okay? Now let's look at what is that really the process which is running in the back end. So let's go to our process view here, and that shows me the process which is actually driving this particular requirement. Now, this is our process designer, again running on the browser, drag and drop, very much like Visio, but unlike Visio, which is just a drawing program, there are a lot of logic behind all these different shapes. So, for example, when a requirement was created, it started from the start node, went to the first activity. So, each of these rectangles is an activity. So, the first activity was associate project assigned to a role called business analyst. And Alan and Mark were the two persons playing that analyst role. So, that's why tasks were created for them. When Alan completed his task, it became green, went to the next node, next activity, review by the reviewers. And since Mary and Sky are playing the reviewer's role, that's why tasks are created for them. And this is shown in blue, which basically means this is now an active node. So let me go to the next tab and log in as Mary, right? Mary is one of the persons who is assigned that task.
Can you say one thing, Sky? That the blue box that you show has all the embedded rules for transferring that task to the right people.
Right. So if it's for each of these activities, whenever somebody is completing that task, based on the rules and based on these arrows, how it is kind of connected to each other, it goes to the next one. So as you will see that once we have completed this particular task, then based on whatever decision we take at that particular point, it will flow through this particular link. So I'll show you that once we act as Mary. So I just logged in as Mary, and this is the home page for Mary, which looks a little different from the home page from Alan. First of all, the color is different, so everybody can have their own preference for a particular color theme. Also, you see that there are a few more items here, and these are the different workspaces. And for the same selected workspace, there are many more tabs here for many more entities. Actually, as I mentioned, that we have actually have more entities, but Alan didn't have access to them, but Mary has. So you have got the project requirements, design elements, development package, test set, test cases, issues, change set, subversion files, etc. So these are all these different entities which Mary has access to. Again, this need not be the whole set of entities. There may be more entities available, but Mary may not have access to the other entities. Okay, now let's look at the My Task page of Mary, and here is a task waiting for Mary, just like Alan and as expected. So here is the task which is related to the same requirement, right? The requirement which we are tracking. The activity is review, and the owner is Mary and Sky, and this is also a queued task. That means any one of them can become the owner. So in the review, what Mary needs to do is that he needs to review basically this particular requirement and then say whether he approves it, he can send it for more information, or he can reject it. And so she approves it here and saves it. So here now it shows that requirement status is approved, and now she's done, so she can complete the task. So just like Alan, now her task is gone from her task page, right? So now we can go back to the process design once again, and Mary was here, and she has just completed the task saying approved. If she had said that need more info, it would have followed through this. If she said rejected, it would have followed through this. Now there are two links saying approved, okay? So let me just refresh this diagram. As I refresh, now this becomes green, and these two becomes blue. So now it has gone to the architect for associate design elements and to the tester for associate test cases as expected based on this link. Now, one thing I want you to note here that, again, this is a task-based system. That's why we have these parallel activities for different owners, architects, and testers. If it were a state-based system, in that case, you have to do it like this, one after another. And in that case, as you can expect, that overall cycle time for this process would have been more, and also it would be much more difficult to model a real-life process, because in the real-life process we do a lot of things in parallel. Okay? All right. The next thing I'd like to show you is that, so what we have done so far, that we have submitted a requirement, a customer requirement, from the corporate website, and we have seen that how that is flowing through the process in Kovair. And Mary has just approved that customer requirement. Now let's say we have people, the business analysts, working on Requisite Pro for managing all the functional requirements. So let's go and open up our Requisite Pro and let's see that how it looks like from the Requisite Pro point of view. That's another requirements management tool, right? So here is the Requisite Pro. Actually, I'm now working on a different server altogether. So I'm just logging into Requisite Pro. And so when it comes here, you see that in our default project here is the customer requirement number 13, which is the same requirement which we are following in Kovair, which is submitted from the corporate website, and that is now replicated in Requisite Pro as a customer requirement. So what we'd like to do here is that we would like to create a new functional requirement. So we are creating a new functional requirement. So this is a functional requirement, okay? And we'll call it a functional requirement for Booz Allen, okay? And let me just take this same one here and put as a description, okay? And let me just save this one. So what I just did, I created a functional requirement as if I'm a business analyst working on this Requisite Pro, and created a functional requirement. But what I'd also like to do is to create a link, a traceability link between this functional requirement and the customer requirement. So let me go to the functional requirement once again, and go to the traceability tab, and add, let's say, the customer requirement. And here is the customer requirement number 13, and I just linked it to the customer requirement, functional requirement. So between the customer requirement and functional requirement, there is a traceability link which I created in Requisite Pro. Okay. So as for Requisite Pro, I'm done. So let me just close the. I just closed. Let me close the Requisite Pro. Okay. All right. Now let me go back to Kovair. Okay. So this is giving some error of the virtual machine. Hopefully that. So that is an error not from Kovair. Remember that if there is an error, that is from Rational.
Nice.
Remember that.
Okay. All right. Let me go to Kovair now. All right. So in Kovair, if I go back to my screen. By the way, one thing I should mention here. So if in the real life, doing this integration and replication from one to the other, etc., that takes a little time between the servers because it is running on a particular frequency. In the demo, sometimes we become a little impatient because it is not happening within 10 seconds or 15 seconds time frame. It can take a minute or two. So I want you to kind of be aware of that. Sometimes you will see that things are coming back and forth between these tools and taking a little time, right? So here is actually, we are back to requirements, and let me refresh this. Here is a functional requirement for Booz Allen. This is the one we just created in Requisite Pro, right? And it has been replicated back to Kovair. So this is what actually Don was mentioning about this bidirectional nature of this integration. So what we have shown you is the replication from Kovair to Requisite Pro in case of customer requirement, and also I have shown you from Requisite Pro to Kovair in case of the functional requirement. So that is the bidirectional nature I want you to understand and highlight. Okay? So now let's go to that functional requirement. So this is the detail of the functional requirement. So requirement type shows functional because we selected in Requisite Pro, right? And here is the description also, which I put it there. Okay, now one of the sections here is for linked requirements. So here you see that this is also linked to the customer requirements. But this linking actually I made in Requisite Pro. So this is another very important point for you to understand is that Kovair Omnibus not only replicates the data between the tools, but it also replicates the relationship between the data from one tool to another tool. So the traceability relation which I created in Requisite Pro is actually got replicated in Kovair also. Okay, so that's an important thing to understand. All right. So the next thing I'd like to do is that we have created this customer requirement and the functional requirement. Okay, so let's actually look at what is really happening with respect to the process of the functional requirement, because there is a process for the functional requirement also, and which is actually a different process. So here is the functional requirement. Now it is actually assigned to Ron and Dave for coding and Ted and Tammy for testing. Actually, these running a different process, and I think I mentioned that you can have multiple processes even for the same application. So for the requirements, you can have different processes. So this one is the process for the functional requirements, which is different from the process for customer requirements. Okay? So that's why it is now gone to for coding to the developers and for testing, test creation for the testers. So what I'd like to do is to now go to Eclipse and let's look at from a developer's point of view. So for that, I have to actually go to a different server, which is again running on a cloud in Amazon. So here is the Eclipse. All right. Okay, so what is happening here? Again, this is also... Okay, so now you see that Omnibus actually, the Eclipse integration is a little different from the Requisite Pro integration you have seen. In Omnibus integration, Eclipse integration, as a matter of fact, there's a plugin for Omnibus, and because of the plugin, there is, as a matter of fact, a menu item called Omnibus there, and we can connect to Omnibus as Dave. Dave is the developer, and we can connect to that. And that brings me the Omnibus Explorer here. You see the Omnibus Explorer with all the different entities Dave has access to, right? And again, this is based on the access right. And one of them is requirement. So let's go to the requirement and let's look at for example, our functional requirements, whether we have it there, the one we created. And here is the functional requirements, 137, right? So this is the same functional requirement we actually created in Requisite Pro, and which got replicated in Kovair. And what we are really doing here from Eclipse, we are actually accessing the repository of Kovair and that particular functional requirement. So Eclipse does not have its own separate repository. It is actually accessing the Kovair repository, but the interface is a native interface of Eclipse. So for example, if I double click that, that will open up this particular requirement in the native interface of Eclipse. But this, you see the form here, that form is actually designed in Kovair using the Kovair interface. But it is being shown here in a native form interface of Eclipse, and we'll see the same thing when we go to the Visual Studio. Okay, now one other thing is, so Dave has been assigned the task, right? So we remember that the process has actually created that task. So let's open up the task window. Let's look at Dave's task. So for example, here is one filter. I think I have Dave's open task. And here is the Dave's open task, you see here. So let me go there. So this is actually the Dave's task, which is related to the same functional requirements, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that you see that the developers, they are very comfortable within their own ID environment, whether it is an Eclipse or Visual Studio. They don't have to actually open up a browser to go to Kovair and look at what are the requirements and what are the tasks assigned to me. They can do everything of all of those things just sitting within their IDE. just what we have seen here, that they can see their own task, they can see the list of requirements, and all of those things. Okay? I'd like to show the similar thing. So let me go to the Visual Studio here, and we'll see basically the same thing. So let's go to the Visual Studio. So though really, from the religion point of view, the Visual Studio developers and the Eclipse developers, they have different religions, but they would be able to see the same God of requirements there. Okay, so let me close this one. And here also, just like Eclipse, in Visual Studio also, Omnibus appears as a add-on, as a plugin. So it appears as a menu item here, and here also I'll log in as Dev. So Dave can actually work on both Eclipse and Visual Studio if he wants, right? And here are the Omnibus Explorer, and here also we can see the requirements, just like we have seen before. So for example, all functional requirements, and here is the functional requirement. And this one is also shown in a native form of Visual Studio, just like what we have seen as a native form of Eclipse in Eclipse. So here also, and all these different tabs you see, those are the different sections in that particular form. And then we can go to the task. And here also we have got Dave's task, Dave's open task. And here is the Dave's task, the same one, right? What we have seen. So as far as the functionality is concerned, it doesn't matter whether you're using Eclipse or Visual Studio, you have access to all the information from Kovair in a native form in this particular IDE. Okay? All right. The next thing I'd like to show you is the subversion integration. So what happens is that...
Hey, Sky, before we do that, does anybody have a question on what you've seen so far?
No, we're doing fine. I'm hoping that we can get into the development environment.
Okay.
No, I'm fine.
All right. So you have seen that we can go into the development environment, right? So both Eclipse and Visual Studio.
Does the question imply that we go into more details there, or what? I'm not sure.
No, I'm sorry. We're fine. I'm just interested to see. There was I had an impression that some of the workflow that we were talking about actually was elements that could be put in the development environment to be in actual application code.
Yes. So I hope that I could show you that.
And the other question I have, if it's possible at all, to demonstrate how you configure the adapters.
Sure, I'll do that. That's actually a very interesting one. I'd like to show you at the end of this, after showing all the integration.
Okay, thanks.
We may skip some integrations if, people have other interests.
Yeah, so let me show you the subversion. Actually, I'm almost there. I'll take 10 minutes of your time, and I'll be able to show you the subversion and QC also. So we are actually using the Tortoise shell for subversion, which is basically integrate subversion with Windows Explorer, right? So what I'll do, I'll actually create a new file here. Okay, so I'll create a new file called text file for Booz Allen. Okay, and all right, and let me just put some data here, like the text file for Booz Allen created by Sky. Okay, and let me save this one. Okay, now what this shell allows me to do is to the Tortoise subversion. I can add this one. So I'm adding this to subversion. So this is adding to subversion. So it says added. Okay, and then what I'll do, I'll commit it. You see the subversion commit? So I commit it to subversion. So what really happens at the subversion end? By the way, if you ask too many questions on subversion, I possibly won't be able to answer too many. But what I understand what's happening in subversion is that it actually creates a chain set. Okay? And in that chain set, you can have multiple different files as a part of that chain set. Okay? So let me just okay this one. So I just committing this, and it says that it has added the change set, and you see that number 23 here. So that is the change set number. That's a revision number which is equivalent to the change set. Okay? And that change set now includes this particular file, the one I just created. Okay? So as far as subversion is concerned, we are done. Really, the interface we have used is the tortoise shell from the Windows Explorer. So you did not really see the subversion interface as such. But now we can go to Kovair back. Okay, so let's go to Kovair. And you see that from Mary's interface, there is one particular tab is called the change set. Right? So let's go to that change set. So the change set number 23 actually I'm expecting there, and it will take a little time there, but let's wait. And so depending on a particular configuration management, actually these integrations are a little different for each one of them. So for example, in case of subversion, we have this change set and files. But in case of Perforce, we have they have got a entity called
Perforce jobs.
Perforce jobs, right? So and also change list.
Job contents changes.
Right. So they have got actually three different entities. Perforce. They have the files, they have the jobs, and they have got the change list. So the jobs include files, and the change list includes jobs. So in that case, the integration with Perforce, as you can expect, is a little different from the integration of the subversion. And again, when we are talking about clear case, it is again somewhat different. So depending on each of these tools, we have created these integrations which are very customized for the capability of each of these tools. All right, so let me try once again. Doesn't come yet. So that's one thing in a demo, that when we are just waiting for this. But we can come back here later. So let me go to the QC and show you the quality center. So let me go to the QC, and I'll come back here. So in QC, actually let me close this one. We are done here. So here's the quality center. So let's go into Quality Center and log in. Here. Okay, so we are inside Quality Center, and here is the function requirement in Quality Center. This is the same function requirement which we created in Requisite Pro, which got replicated in Kovair, and now it is replicated in QC also, right? So that is the kind of integration we are trying to show you. Now what we'd like to do here is that we want to create a test plan here, and that is what typically people do, right? So they create a test plan, and here is our project, and we'll create so we'll call it a test plan for Booz Allen. Okay? And not only that, we'll create that, and also we will create a requirement coverage between this test plan and our functional requirement. So here's the functional requirement, and just drag and drop. Okay? So this is now the link between the functional requirement and the test plan. As a matter of fact, we can go to the requirement here, right? The same functional requirement, and look at the coverage here, which shows the same test plan I just created is now linked. So this is another kind of traceability relation I'm showing, which is between a test case or test plan in Quality Center and a functional requirement, which actually started its life in Requisite Pro, and now it is replicated in both QC and Kovair. Okay? So I'm done with QC here, so I can close this one. And let me go back to Kovair, and let me just one more time try this change set. Oh yeah, here it is. So change set number 23. Remember that change set number 23 was when I committed that particular file. So here's the changes number 23, right? And here is the linking for the subversion file, and here is the subversion file. This is the same one. So if I click on that, now we can go to the subversion file entity. So this is the subversion file entity here. So it shows the file path and all those things which are related to the subversion. And here is the file content. So when I click on the file content, and this is another very interesting thing, that when I click on the file content, actually the file content is on real time is getting transferred from subversion to Kovair. So this is a classic case of federation, that we are not replicating the file content in Kovair, but we are actually showing it as on a real-time basis getting it from subversion. So, and you see that this is the same file content I created in that particular text file, right? Okay. Now also, we can have the file history. So if you look at it here, so it shows the file history. So every time you are changing that file history is actually kept here. Again, it is on-demand retrieved from subversion. So you can see all those information with respect to each of the files which are kept in subversion from this particular entity. Okay? Now, let me go back to the change set. So one more thing I want to do with the change set is I want to actually link our functional requirement to change set. So basically what I'm saying that, that I have made changes or have implemented this particular source file, right? And that is related to my functional requirement. So I'm just relating my functional requirement, the same one here, right? Done. And that links that particular change set to the functional requirement. Again, this functional requirement, if you remember, started its life from Requisite Pro. So I'm done with respect to change set. Now let's go to the test cases now. And here is the test plan which we created in QC. Remember the test plan, right? And not only that, note one more thing. That test plan is now flowing through a process. So it is assigned to Thomas for assigned tester. And if I want to look at the particular process here, it shows me the process for this test case, right? Now, this is what I was talking about when I say that we empower the other tools. We augment their capability. So you see the QC does not have any process capability like Kovair. But because of the integration, now the test cases which are created in QC actually now going through a process which is defined in Kovair. And the whole thing is automated. And every time that something is changing in Kovair, the status will be updated in QC so that the testers who are using just QC, nothing else, they would be able to see that how that test case is moving from one person to another person. Okay, so that is the process of the test case. Now, if we go to the detail of this particular test case, so let's go to the detail of this test case. And here is a link requirement. And here is the linking of that functional requirement. Remember? But that linking we did in QC. So just like Requisite Pro, Omnibus not only replicated the test case back to Kovair, but also it replicated the linking between the test case and the requirement from QC to Kovair. Okay? So that kind of completes my all the different integrations I wanted to show. Okay? But one of the greatest advantage of all this integration is when I can see all of these different data coming from different tools in a right kind of context, which brings us to the traceability view. This is a kind of report starting from the project. Remember, initially, when the customer requirement was submitted, Alan linked it to the Annex project. So we'll start from this project, Annex project. Under the project, we have all these different customer requirements. And one of them is the customer requirement which we submitted from the corporate website, 136, right? So we expand that. That shows me the functional requirements which is linked with that. And remember, this functional requirement started its life in Requisite Pro. We expand that. That shows the change set which was created in subversion linked with this functional requirement. We expand that. And that shows that the actual file in the subversion which is linked to this particular change set. And next, then there you have the test case which is linked with this particular requirement. So I forgot one more thing. As a matter of fact, let me go to the test case one more time, because I want to show you one other thing is that from this test case, when you are actually running the test case and change the status to failed, so somebody has actually tested this test case, right? And after the testing, the test actually failed, made the round status failed, right? And what happens in Kovair, actually automatically our issue is created based on that. And that issue, if I go to the issue status here, let me go to the process view. You see the issue for test plan for Booz Allen. So this issue is automatically created whenever that test plan actually fails. And not only that, it has started its own process. Now it has gone to Thomas for review, right? And you can see the process for the issues here. This is the process for the issue as it is going through, and it is a different process. We have seen actually 4 different processes. We have seen the customer requirement process, we have seen the functional requirement process, we have seen the test case process, and this is the issues process. For every different entity, you can create one or more multiple processes. Okay, so let me cancel that and go back to that traceability view once again, because now you'll be able to see actually more detailed one. So we start from the project, then expand the customer requirement, then we have the functional requirement, expand that. That is connected to the change set, expand the change set. Here is the file, and here is the test plan, expand the test plan, and here is the issue which is linked to that. So as you can see here that all these different items, one came from the corporate website, one came from the Requisite Pro, one came from Subversion, actually 2 came from Subversion, and 1 came from the QC, right? But you see all of them together in a single view in the context of each other based on their relationship with each other. Okay? All right, so before I go to the actual configuration to show how this adapters are configured, any questions so far?
Yes, I have a question. Could you please show what kind of document, what kind of requirement traceability matrix is going to spit out?
Okay, so this is actually one of the views where you'll be able to see the requirements and the other requirements linked with that. There are other views also. So for example, if I go to the requirements tab here, so one of them is a traceability view, and there are other traceability views also on the requirements, which is between the requirements to requirements. So you can have a requirements to requirement traceability view. And for each one of them, you can expand that and see what are the other requirements which are linked to that, and you can actually expand further. So this actually gives you a hierarchy of that. But we also have, so here is a requirement to test case kind of view. Now we also have a metrics view. So in a metrics view, for example, let me give you an example of a requirement to test cases. Okay, so this actually shows, interestingly, that the rows are requirements and columns are test cases. So of course you can create the traceability between the requirements, the same entity, but you can create the traceability between the different entities as well. And I say that highlight all the orphans, for example. So orphans are those items which does not have any relation. So the highlighted test cases, you see, which do not have any relation, and here is one requirement which does not have any relation either. So if your business rule or business policy is that there should not be any requirement which is orphan, you must have at least one test case for each of the requirements. You immediately can see that there are a few items which do not have any kind of relation. Now the arrow actually shows the direction of the impact. That means if the requirement changes, then that particular test cases will be impacted. Okay. Now, from here itself, you can also double-click a cell, for example, here, and create the relationship. So that creates the relationship, and not only that, now these two are no more orphans, right? Now, I can also delete it here. If I delete it, then again our requirement number 4 and test case number 9 becomes again orphan. So this actually gives you a very flexible way not only to see the relationship between different entities, different items, but also manage them, create them all in the same interface. We also have yet another way of actually looking at the traceability. Traceability is such an important thing, so Kovair actually gives you a number of different ways actually to look at that. And let me go to one of the requirements, detail of one of the requirements, and show it from that point of view. That is called the relation diagram. So basically, in a relation diagram, this is actually a network diagram between an item with all the other items which it is related to. All right, make it a little bigger here. So this is a requirement number 1, and this is related to all the other requirements. For example, you see that RE are all the different requirements. D means design elements. T means test cases. So all the other entities and items, you can see it in a single diagram how they are related with each other. Not only that, you can also find out, for example, if you have a question that what are the common items between this requirement number 26 and requirement number 1. So you just double click that, and that expands that particular requirement, and you now know what are the common elements from both of these items. So you can actually expand one node at a time and see how these relationships are related, how these different items are related with each other. So Kovair actually gives you 3 different views for the traceability: the metrics view, the traceability report view, and the network diagram. Okay. And the one last thing I would like to show you is also basically a traceability, but in a very nicely formatted report format. So this is actually a Word report. So we have an add-on for Microsoft Word using which you can create a template, Word template, and in that you can embed information coming from Kovair. And with a single click, you can create this report, which is basically a Word document. So here is that example of a Word document, which is a case compliance report. And you have the complete flexibility on the formatting. Use the full power of Microsoft Word. But actual data are all coming from Kovair. So for example, here at the top, you have the customer requirements, and under that, you have the hardware and software system requirements related by traceability relation. Then you have the test cases, which are related by the traceability relation to the hardware and software requirements. Now, if I go to a particular element here, so here's the customer requirement. By the way, Kovair has a rich text editor, so your descriptions and many other text you can put in a highly formatted kind of rich text with embedded images, table, bullet, numbering, everything, and all of those are preserved when this document is created. So here's the customer requirement and the hardware system requirement, and here's the test case. And these are all related by the traceability relation. So here is a test case with the run result. You can have multiple runs of the same test case, and it keeps the whole history of that, and these are the final results. Now, here is a very interesting report, test compliance report, which is almost impossible to create if you try to do it in manually. Because, think about it, that every day the things are changing. You are creating new test cases, you're creating new requirements, you are running the test case, the run results are changing. So to maintain a report like that manually is almost impossible. But in Kovair, with a single click, you can create this nicely formatted document and hand over to your customer. Say, Mr. Customer, these were your original customer requirements. We have decomposed into hardware and software system requirements, which we decomposed into a number of test cases. And actually, those test cases are coming from QC. So it is not necessary that all the informations are actually started there like in Kovair. They may be using the hardware and software requirements from other requirements management tool like Requisite Pro. The test cases are kept in QC, but still you are creating a single document like this with the information from different tools. So does it, I know this is a long answer to a short question, but does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Serious.
So we need to go to that adapter.
Right. So is there any other question before I go to show you how the adapters are configured?
This is John Druitt. I'm going to have to drop off probably in the next 5 minutes. I actually have a 4 o'clock I have to prepare for as well, because this has been very, very interesting and it's giving me a lot to think about.
Okay, very good. And thank you, John, for attending this. But I tried to show it in 5 minutes.
Roger that. Understood.
Yeah, this is Jesse.
Okay.
That goes the same for me. But Don, after this, we'll be in touch about getting the software too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working the NDA, Jesse. I've got the signed copy from their side, and it's on its way to Ron Hosh right now.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks, John.
All right.
I need to drop off. Excuse me. This is Oleg. I need to drop off in 5 minutes as well because they have 4 o'clock.
Okay, understand.
So we'll wrap it up in 5 minutes.
Okay, so we are looking at the Omnibus under the workspace setup. Okay, there's Omnibus tab. And these are all the different tools which are registered using the web services. You see that these are the web service name and detail of that. So what is really important, let's go to the entity mapping here. So, and let's take an example, QC as an example, Quality Center. So in the Quality Center, for example, Kovair test to Quality Center test. So automatically our adapter recognizes that what are the different objects we have in the external tool. And what we are doing, from those external tool objects, we are mapping to the entity in Kovair. Okay, so let's go to the edit menu here. And this is what we are showing is from Quality Center. Quality Center is actually an interesting tool because they have got multiple objects like the requirements, test plan, test sets, test lab, defects, etc. So that's why you can actually map different entities of QC to different entities in Kovair. So here is the first instance entity test, and you can have multiple different of those. And then once you have mapped those things, you can go to the field mapping. The field mapping field, the field of the entities at both the ends, and you can create those mapping between the fields of these two tools. Remember that QC is actually running on our cloud server on Amazon, so it's taking a little time to communicate with each other. Okay, so here they are, and here it is a map. And these are all automatic, which basically means if you create a new custom field in QC, this will automatically pop up here. You don't have to do anything. Just add in QC, add in Kovair, and map it here. You don't have to touch anything with respect to the integration. And that is one of the greatest advantage of Omnibus. Okay. Now, you also can have a composite field mapping, which is basically multiple rows of fields. So in test case, I think there may be a test run or something like that. You can also do those kinds of mapping as well. And while you are doing this mapping, you can also say that what kind of transformation will take place when the data is going from one to the other. Yeah, so here is the composite field mapping. You can also do that, okay? So the Kovair is very rich from that point of view, that whatever the data type you have for the other tool, we have a equivalent data type in Kovair as well. And then you can also do the transformation. I don't think there is any transformation yet. Okay. The other thing I want to show you is the service flow, which is another very powerful thing. So the service flow basically says that what is the event, and based on that event, what is really happening. So for example, one of the events here, let's see, RecPro, okay? So this RecPro says that whenever, let's go to the detail of that. So it says that whenever a functional requirement is linked to a customer requirement in Kovair, then the same is done in RecPro, okay? And it gives you the event condition and the action. So this is the action. So for each of the events, you can have multiple actions. So for example, as you have seen here, a functional requirement, when it is added in RecPro, is automatically replicated to Kovair as well as QC. Okay, with a single event in RecPro actually triggers two actions. One is in Kovair and one is in QC. And all of those things are actually done in service flow here. So what is really important to note here is that you see that these business rules about the field mapping, about the service flows, they are not hard-coded in our adapter. they are actually configured by the end users like you, independent of the adapter. So we have empowered the end user to actually manage all these integrations using a very user-friendly interface, drag and drop interface like this one. Unlike other integrations, every time you want to change anything in these kinds of business rules, you have to change the code of the integration. You have to get the help of the IT and the developer and testing, all of those things. But here, it's so easy to create those things and change those things on the fly. Okay, so this is how you do the configurations of Omnibus with respect to multiple tools.